I want to thank everyone for coming today. Of course, our speakers, I think you will all benefit from the insights you will hear. I certainly want to thank our primary sponsor, 1-800-Flowers, for their contribution to this event. And I also wanted to plant a seed so you can start to mull this over as you hear the series of diverse presentations today. The thread that will carry through all of them is the thread of clarity and simplicity. And I wonder if once you registered for this event, if you suddenly became much more aware of how much clarity and simplicity are being touted by companies, in particular in their marketing programs. Just this past weekend, McDonald's announced a new positioning of the simpler, the better. Optimum Cablevision is running a series of TV ads in this market where they have a simplicity department that they feature prominently. Volvo is touting the notion that simplicity is luxury. So as you think about what you hear today and see how many creative applications and definitions there are for clarity and simplicity, I hope your major takeaway will be that simplicity can change the way you conduct your business, the way you conduct your life, the way you communicate, and the way you craft customer experiences. So if someone's presenting about law, criminal justice, or healthcare, it's not narrow to that field. What they'll be talking about is really something that transcends multiple disciplines and multiple industries. And Alan and I have devoted our careers to exploring the many multifacets of simplicity and what it means. And we're very pleased to be able to bring together this group here today to explore this issue. But more importantly, we hope that after today, you will all take away these thoughts and apply them in your own circumstances. Alan is the CEO of Siegelvision, and he will be kicking off our day today and beginning with our first speaker from Merrill Lynch, John Thiel, and we are delighted that he has decided to spend the time with us today. Thank you.
I'd like to second Irene on this and welcome everybody. We're really very excited to have this day. We sent out a call for entries to potential speakers, and we got over 200 or 300 responses in, and we picked 10 or 12 people who we think represent a good cross-section of people who are devoted to simplification and are coming up with very innovative solutions. So to my left is John Thiel, who is the head of wealth management at Merrill. He joined the company in 1989. He has 14,000 financial advisors that report to him, 6,000 client associates, which is a staggering number. And what we met John in connection with Siegel and Gale, whose two CEOs are here with us, a number of years ago, and I believe John is one of the CEOs who's really committed to simplification, so we were so pleased that he could come and spend the time with us. So just to kind of kick this off, in this day and age when there's so much competition in the wealth management business, what are you doing to differentiate and distinguish Merrill Lynch?
Yeah, I think this industry is ripe for simplification. I think any regulated industry has an overabundance of caution as it relates to communicating. One of the first things that we did, or I did when I took this role, was really kind of look. It was coming out of the crisis, so look at where we were. And in our case, our industry's reputation was poor. We looked at any of the measures. The Element Trust Barometer is an example. So, to me, the first thing to do is to try to talk to our clients in a way in which they would understand. And I thought, my personal opinion was, having been trained as a financial advisor in the late 80s, that we had actually been trained the wrong way. And so I wanted to go about changing the dialogue with our clients. And we had this, I think, this insane obsession with comparing what we do to a benchmark as if that were the ultimate determinant of a client's success. So you made an investment, how did it do relative to the S&P 500? And I thought to myself, well, I don't know if that really matters, because I want to retire comfortably, and I want to give some money to my kids, and I want to educate them. So I actually looked at where we sat in 2011, and what had happened is, we had this huge bull market in from 80 to 2000. Everybody made money in equities, and then we went 11 years and nobody made money in equities, and we had the tech wreck and we had the financial crisis. And what I realized is that we had never changed the message. While it was great to beat the S&P when it averaged 12% a year, it didn't feel so good when it averaged 1.1% a year for 10 years. And we had a lot of people who thought they were doing well because the industry had said, hey, we beat the benchmark, but they couldn't send their kids to the colleges they wanted. They were struggling with retirement. So we had to change the dialogue to one which is, you should evaluate us based on our ability to help you achieve the desired outcomes you have. And so that was our first step, to make it easier to understand what you were doing with the financial advisor in our industry. And obviously performance is important, but it's a table stake. And we owe the public more, which was this notion of, I can help you achieve the desired outcomes if you and I behave the right way together over some period of time.
Is there still a lot of distrust of financial service organizations these days?
Yes, I mean, we continue to do things as an industry that would create that doubt. So there still is. Now, I know that what we do when we do it well is profound. And everybody can tell a story, hopefully, where someone's made a difference in their lives. I just think from a macro perspective that there are still things that are done and have happened that hurt the reputation.
So what are the specific programs that you put into effect to create this dialogue with your customers and get them thinking in a more sophisticated way about their future?
Well, to me, it's pretty fundamental. It starts with really understanding our clients. And while our regulators say we have to know this, this, and this, which is your demographic information, your financial information, and your risk tolerance, and the time horizon that you have to achieve that, what we realize is that falls way short. You don't know me because I tell you those things. You should know what keeps me up at night, for example. I mean, we even say goals-based wealth management, but I argue that I'm not so sure all of us have clear, specific goals around our financial lives. But I know one thing we all have is things we worry about in the middle of the night, and we all have needs and priorities. So even that, we're trying to make sure our advisors talk to people about what they lay awake at night worrying about versus what just goals are. Because I think it's a more fundamental way to approach what they're looking to do.
And how is simplification played into this picture?
Well, it's the whole notion that we're going to just sort of remove all this, the detail, to the extent we can, and get to what you really want and what you really need. And I think by grounding it upon that kind of concept, which is, hey, what do you worry about? Then I think it's easier for our clients to understand the objectives they're trying to achieve. So we become, by being simple in that way, we get a better outcome for both.
How difficult has it been to change the culture of the organization to reflect this new idea?
Well, I always use the analogy of the medical industry, and I know there's some people here. A lot of people didn't start out to document every conversation and have a roadmap that they had to follow for every particular person. So it's been a challenge. I mean, we have a 100-year-old company. We have 15,000 advisors. 25% of those advisors are over the age of 60. By the way, we're the youngest sales force in the industry. So trying to change somebody who's 62, who's making a lot of money and has 92% client satisfaction, that's a big human change project. So it's hard, but the way we try to ground it is to think about the interactions, the most successful interactions they've had with their clients, and that typically is around a very simple notion in some life event where money and life collide and they were able to provide the guidance. The challenge is that because the way we were all trained and developed, and this is industry-wide, is our badge of honor was we could perform from an investment perspective, and that was the differentiator. And what we know is that isn't the big differentiator. Asset allocation in this case is a bigger determinant of success, and tying it to outcomes and doing it in partnership with our clients because their ability to save and do other things are important. That is what we're trying to ground them on, and then make the process to do all that very simple and integrate it. Use technology to integrate it, operationalize it so that it's a few clicks and it's easy to gather, and then we tie what that client wants to do all the way to how they're doing towards it as we evaluate performance, but do that in a systemic way. That's how we've been trying to do it.
How inhibiting has been all of this regulation with, you know, notices and requirements that the Fed has put out?
Inhibiting, so that's probably the right word, but not, I wouldn't describe it the way you might think about it. It was inhibiting in that as you're trying to change people's behavior, have to is not the right way to start. And so if we're looking at the regulatory framework as a have to, it's that makes it a struggle. We've tried to reframe it as a want to, which is all they're saying is do a better job of understanding your clients and then reminding them and whomever wants to come check what you actually did for them. So we're trying to reframe this as, listen, this is an opportunity for you to really demonstrate your value, and if you can document and demonstrate that value over time, your clients will pay you more, and obviously you'll meet whatever demand. And our big problem is if people think that this is a forced march, you're not going to get people to evolve, and so we've tried to reframe it.
And how do you measure how you're doing on this program?
Well, we have lots of different measures. One clearly is client satisfaction. We've created an internal document or a metric called client wellness, where it measures the engagement of our clients, sort of their mindset, and then risk. You know, if there's any issues that we have. It's a series of metrics. The great news, this is an example of using big data for good, which is we can accumulate a lot of behaviors in and around our clients and our advisors to do that. Obviously, I said client satisfaction, client attrition. If client attrition is low, we feel good. If they're engaging us across multitudes of needs and concerns, again, not products, needs and concerns, I think that's another key metric we watch.
So we've worked with a lot of companies in simplification. Since you are so aware of this, who else do you think is doing a good job in the financial service area?
Well, I think anybody that started in the last 15 years has a distinct advantage because it allows them to use technology to try to simplify that. And the key to simplification, I think, for any business is the quality of the data that you have. And obviously, if you're 100 years old, 50 years old, that quality is probably not near as good as if you're 10 years old. So I think really any company that started over the last 10 or 15 years is doing it well. Now, you've always got to balance simple with the regulatory reality, which is if you ask me 4 questions, that's it. Do you really know me? So we'll find out, right? We'll find out in the next crisis.
All right, so I'll let, you've been very helpful in our tutor. Let's throw this open to questions. So anybody have any questions? Yes.
Thanks, John. That's really interesting to me. I think it's, we have a microphone.
Here you go.
You're right. Thanks. This is Howard Bell. John, thanks for being here. Great conversation. I think it's extraordinary that we're in a circumstance where a company with a history of 50 or 100 years is at a disadvantage to a company with a history of 10 or 12 years. That must be frustrating on some level. I mean, how in a environment like that do you leverage that extraordinary heritage of Merrill?
Yeah, so I don't, so he asked just about simple, right? I don't think we're at a disadvantage. We have the hard part done. We have the people, we have the culture, we have the platform, we have scale. That's the hard part. That's what we have to then the counter of that is that's probably not as simple as it could be if it had been created over the last century. So what we've got to do is how do we get our data at a point where it's really where we want it so that technology can actually do what it does so well for us. And so we're in that making sure that the data is incredible, it's got incredible high quality, and then the technology will actually be much easier for us to catch up and then pass.
So it's helping the bull get more nimble.
There you go.
While they're doing this, what about simplifying the organization? You're part of Bank of America, which is a massive thing. You're in the Bank of America building. How easy can you make it for people to access a huge organization like Merrill Lynch?
Well, when I took over in 2011, I flattened the organization. There's only between me and the financial advisor 3 layers of management. years. I have 10 divisions, well actually 2 left, and a market executive, and then the FA. The reason I did that is, one, we do have 14,000, but if they're on teams, it's really only 4,000 entities. So I can get that span to where it works. But I want to hear from the customer and the advisor as directly as possible. And what I do know in a company like this, the hardest part of my job is actually saying something and have it be heard the way I said it through even just 3 layers, even 2 layers. It's almost impossible.
John, I think all of us in this room, or a lot of us, saw The Big Short, the movie, which tried to demystify in some ways what happened back in 2008. And one of the things that movie showed was how complexity and lack of understanding of these financial tools created part of the problem. What responsibility does the financial industry have today to make sure that the tools that are available to customers are actually understood and the dangers and opportunities of those tools can't be misused?
Yeah, so obviously that's an easy question to answer. Every industry, including financial services, has an obligation to make sure that the complexity doesn't confuse the end customer. So we have that too, and that's something we work very hard on. And when you think about, we actually have at least we have 3 clients at Bank of America Merrill Lynch. We have institutional investors. They're much more capable of understanding complexity. We have institutions themselves, companies, and then we have individuals. As it relates to individuals, we have very high thresholds of screening to make sure that that never happens. That there's not something that's offered to our clients and advisors that is not easily understood. So we have I always have had a lot of governance in and around that. But of course it's critical.
I've got some questions from this side of the room here. Yes.
Good morning, Richard Levin from the Gold Foundation. We're going to be talking about healthcare this afternoon, but one of the discoveries after 2,500 years of being in the field was that a single point of contact for the patient or your client and the healthcare system would be an answer. I wonder how close you are to achieving that for individuals.
For individuals, so from a financial perspective, I think what you're seeing, so there's a lot of talk about technology and the financial services, robo-advisors, and what they're trying to do, which we've all been trying to do, is really lead with aggregation. And aggregation of information is just what, by the way, the healthcare system has just a product of it over the last 6 weeks, needs it badly. And so the same way is if we can leverage technology and have the right security and trusting relationship with the client, we are trying to get our clients to aggregate more information. They may not aggregate their assets, but we want them to aggregate their information because I need to know everything they own and have for them, me to do the best job for the part that I manage. But I can't effectively make recommendations if I don't know that they have something that looks just like that somewhere else, and then I'm actually concentrating that exposure versus diversifying that. I obviously believe that with medication. My mother-in-law is struggling right now, and I just feel highly confident, as does my wife, that she's got this issue because she's too much medication. She doesn't have anybody managing the medication that she's taking. So it's critical for both. Now, the good news is we actually have a client who's working feverishly to make that a reality in the healthcare system. And as a patient, I'm a big advocate of it.
On that point, it's really interesting because I did the branding for Mount Sinai a year and a half ago, and in looking at best practices, we looked at Mayo, we looked at the Cleveland Clinic. Irene and I went out there in our book, and the big problem in New York is who are you going to go to in a crisis? Who's going to manage your medical situation? And why can't you have a Mayo or Cleveland Clinic have to? And the big hospitals won't do it. And it's a moneymaker on top of everything. So I really can't figure it out.
But that you can say that about any industry. I think people think they control information, that they have that's what matters, and it's just the opposite. I think sharing of information for people you trust is differentiated.
Exactly. Do we have any other questions for John? Yes. Who's that?
You mentioned technology a few times, and Alan and I believe very strongly that empathy is probably the starting point for any kind of true simplification. And technology is not always thought of as being the height of an empathetic response. But I'm fascinated by the fact that Merrill has a tool that they market called Face Retirement, which is an age progression tool. And you simply go on the computer, look at the screen, it snaps your picture, and then unfolding before your eyes, you see yourself at 70, 80, 90 years old. To me, it was the height of empathy in the sense of empathizing with your future self. But I wondered, do you know what kind of consumer reaction you've had, and has it achieved the objective?
I think it's had some impact, and the whole idea of that is just to, I think people think I'll just wait, it's a long time from now, it's a long time from now, and then they miss the miracle of compounding. So the idea was, hey, this will happen, and that's what you're gonna look like and you might feel like, so you should get started now. So it certainly had some positive impact. I think to your point, we're working really hard on that empathy piece. And so it's obviously the conversations that our advisors have, but it's gotta be the interactions the organization has digitally or, from a technology perspective that has that same level of empathy. And again, we're just trying to get people to think about what it is that when life meets money, what can we do to help you think through that? And that's where we're going to point all of our energy. What you see is, whether it's our self-directed channel or our advised channel, is we've really made it all around life priorities. And we want our clients to engage with us based on the way they think about their lives, not the way we think about what we do. So it's home health, it's leisure, it's giving, it's finances, it's family. Those are the things, that's how we all behave. So we should meet you where you are instead of asking you to learn what we do.
Any other questions? Yes. Yeah.
Michael Cruz from Merrill Lynch, Montgomery County. I have a question with the technology and simplicity of wealth management. Where do you see that going for the next 5-10 years as far as employment goes?
As far as employment?
Employment goes with the current jobs that you have now. How is that changing?
Well, I think the big challenge for everybody, and especially in our business, is the capacity to serve in a way which is something we would all think is the right way to interact with one another. Technology is going to be a huge enabler, and so I actually think it's a productivity tool for us for sure. So we sit in an industry that's growing. Aggregate wealth in this country and this world is growing at 8%. There's not too many industries that can look at your aggregate marketplace and see real growth. And so, and yet the trend for our number of advisors, as I mentioned earlier, is actually pointing down. And so if I'm a young person thinking about a career, this actually is something that they should consider, because it's a growth industry with a declining advisor force where technology actually could be a huge enabler and allow you to serve people more easily and actually, I think, in a more effective way. I think it's got great hopes for the future.
Any other questions?
Hi, I'm Marietta Robinson, and I am a federal regulator, although not of your industry.
Are you sure?
I have not followed this issue closely, but I'm very interested in the pushback that the financial industry seems to be giving to, I think it's the Department of Labor, in trying to impose a fiduciary duty on people who are managing retirement accounts. Are you able to explain simply why there's that resistance?
Well, I will tell you what our position is, that we embrace the higher interest, the higher standard that's harmonized,
Good.
right? So that, I don't want to speak for the industry, I can just speak for us. From the outset, you see my public comments, we've supported that because all it does is embody what I've just spent the last 15 minutes talking about.
That was excellent.
Any other questions? All right, well, John, thank you very much. We really appreciate it.